I'm speaking, but I think you might be lagging behind me now. So let's move on. Hopefully the system will catch up.
I suppose everybody's on the internet streaming stuff now.
All right, people are typing in they can hear Nigel okay, so I'll carry on. So this is a WebEx session, but think of it more as a magazine, not a deep dive into a topic that's particularly new. Lots of short articles, references to blogs and websites, YouTube videos to get more information, but it'll be quite a jolt every time I change this slide almost. And as you know, I tend to be a bit fast and a bit blunt in places. That's my style. Okay, I'll carry on, see if it picks up. Now, every IBM knows whenever we present anything, we've got to say hybrid multi-cloud. So there, I've got that out of the way. I have my own rack of 5 racks of power servers, and we're using Power VC there. So I don't really have a need for cloud, but at the Technical University in October, we were allowed to use SkyTap for the student labs. In exchange of free time on SkyTap, we gave them a little bit of advertising, put their logo on the front of the lab guide and things like that. And for my sessions, one of them was the AIX performance tuning. I gave them a little demonstration of what I could see. That some of the students had the idea that they were going to have control of my SkyTap. I don't think so, guys. You could click 10 buttons and destroy everything I set up over a couple of weeks. But it was fascinating having a look at SkyTab. The screen actually looks like this, and so I was doing the AIX performance class. You see the top left, that was my master image that has it just the way set up, ready for the client. So then the students that come in, and I could clone out that to 15 or 30 student copies of AIX in about 5 minutes. They could all do their thing. Of course, I had Njmon running by default on those logical partitions or virtual machines. And so I could actually look in my Njmon graphs to see who was doing what. The lab session had some I/O for the disk I/O, and then they run memory busy, and it runs out and starts paging, and then they go on to looking at the CPU. So by looking at my graphs, I can see which student was at which part.
Yes, yeah, go ahead and get started. Sorry about that. I don't know if you heard me or not.
Yeah. So, and it's a little bit like the HMC. It's a little bit like Power VC. You can start and stop virtual machines. We can add networks by a click of a button. It's quite nice. And so we could set that all up. I also running one on Njmon, so people could try everything out there. But of course, we also have IBM Cloud, and I asked some people earlier in the week, why would you recommend the Power Virtual Server as opposed to IBM Cloud? And it turns out, well, they're one and the same thing. The Power Virtual Server is one of the offerings in the IBM Cloud that is really good for your power guys that understand the power things that we want to do with our power computers, our virtual CPUs and entitlements and all that sort of thing. So that's the one you should be looking at. But the cloud systems do, to me, this is a personal view, not an IBM one, is that it's a bit of a wild, wild west out of there. Not as in you're going to get mugged or shot by a cowboy, but as in things are so rapidly changing, it's difficult to keep up. If you find a presentation that is more than 6 months old, it's out of date. It might say we've now got 5 data centers, and if you go and look on the day, you've probably got 10 out there now as they've spread out and multiply and add all these services. I also found that although SkyTap isn't part of IBM, it's a separate company, they're actually backing up their AIX resources on IBM Cloud. So a lot of the relationships are going on between these various cloud providers backing each other up, which is a good thing to see. If somebody's got stretching their resources, they can borrow some from one of the others. There's a link down the bottom, ibm.com/cloud.free, and being in there, had a look. The frightening thing is that if you ask for AIX, well, this is what happened when I did it 3 or 4 months ago, it says, okay, give us your credit card and we'll let you have that for free. and we'll let you know before we start charging you any money. And I think, this is my money. You know, if you suddenly by accident create an old pile with 200 CPUs in it and a terabyte of memory, they could be after me the following week for 10,000 euro dollar pounds or something. So you have to be a little bit careful in there. I'm talking to the people who actually run it. If you're running a tiny micro partition, I might want to recompile in Njmon or something on it. You know, run a few 2 hours on a very small virtual machine. We're talking about a couple of pounds. It's not a big investment in that sense. Of course, most of the cloud providers don't really want one man and a dog wanting a virtual machine. They want big customers, big clients that, we want 500 CPUs and terabytes of memory and petabytes of disk. And then you'll find that most of them don't give you very clear idea what the price is, or they say, talk to us and we'll find you a price that you're happy with. It's negotiated down to a price. So it's still fairly early days, in my opinion, on cloud, but a lot of people are doing this. And like with my experience with SkyTap, it was very nice just to clone off 30 copies of a virtual machine and not worry where that was coming from. If it was in my computer room, I'd have to find where the spare resources are, but they're doing all that for you automatically. And then I can just equally throw them away at the end of the class. Whatever the student did, they may have wrecked AIX in their virtual machine. I can throw them away and make a whole bunch more for the next morning, the next lab that I was running. I tried to find one slide that's reasonably up to date. Although you can see at the bottom, I took how many the geographies of where all the computers rooms were, and I knew they were already out of date on this chart. So it's IBM Cloud. If you're looking for power things, the place in IBM that you want to go to is the virtual server service in IBM Cloud. Now you can get AIX running in other clouds. I know Google have got some Power 9 machines, for example. SkyTap are out there, and our own IBM business partners can offer these services. They may be backed up by IBM Cloud, but they'll do them directly and tailor the service to exactly what you need. And there's some example test cases there, test systems. That's very much what I would want to do. Perhaps you want to run some of your services, move them out there into the cloud anyway, and disaster recovery. You could have a minimum set out there ready to go. So if you do have a disaster in your computer room, then you've got somewhere to go. Right, something completely different. This is the AIX top page. IT, infrastructure, power, OS, AIX. I don't quite understand why it's not ibm.com/AIX, because AIX is a big money earner for IBM. It's a big popular operating system. In that circle there's a report from the IDC Vendor Spotlight Report, it's called. If you go into that, you see a couple of graphs, and I just want to share two of these graphs, which are fairly unpleasant, actually, but we want to talk a little bit more about them. So here's the graph. In the past 10 years, you can see the Unix server revenue has come down from 11 to $2 billion. But I want to make a few comments on that. You'll notice we get quite a lot of people saying Unix is dead. And the answer is no, that is not true. The people you meet might think that. If you're a Linux person, for example, and you only meet Linux people, you all agree that Unix is dead. But actually, a little bit like the mainframes that I were thought dead 35 years ago, they're still going strong. They're still there. They've still got a lot of people that want to use them. So we're steadying down to this $2.5 billion industry. So the small Unix companies have been merged or bought or failed. IBM bought Sequent, for example. They weren't very small. They were quite a big company, partly for the intellectual property, partly because they had a load of really good guys that are still working at IBM. And Linux took over initially on laptops, because that's where it was all developed, and PCs, small servers, 2 sockets, that sort of thing, maybe slightly bigger than that. But AIX is sitting in this $2.5 billion market. And I reckon 2 billion of that is AIX. Now, how would I back that up? Well, the other Unixes which are still there are HPUX and Solaris. Now, when Solaris and Sun were taken over by Oracle, that was the kiss of death for Solaris. I quite liked Solaris. It was the main competitor for a lot of my 2 decades of benchmarking AIX against Solaris. It was a great day when we actually beat them even on their biggest machines. And I think IBM just out-researched and developed Sun and Solaris. And there's still a lot of people that still like Solaris out there. We come across them now and again. HPUX, I don't know more about that. I know they use our logical volume manager in HPUX. They actually sort of bought a license for the code. That's in there. I looked at the Wikipedia site for HPUX. They haven't done an update for, I think it's 8 or 9 years. It's basically ground to a halt at that point. There are a few service packs for new bits of hardware, adapters and things. So those two are on the way, and then if you like, AIX is the winner. IBM has invested a lot of money in their version of Unix, and that has paid off in the long term. Okay, so somebody said there that HPX development stopped 5 years ago. Interesting. Now, AIX is dominant in what I call big iron, the bigger end of the server market rather than the small one. We concede the smaller ones to the Linux guys because we go for the mission critical big things. Now, I keep calling them the low end, but the S924, 24 CPUs, up to 4 terabytes of memory, it's not a little computer. When you think our cores are like 2 to 3 times faster than an Intel or AMD core, then that's quite a meaty machine, even if it's regarded as the low end of our range. And we go up to the nearly 200 CPU cores and 64 terabytes of memory. Now, yesterday I was talking about Power Down on another virtual user group, and you can go and have a look at that, and we explain that the smaller, the S924 replacement for Power 10, the name hasn't been decided yet, is going to be 60 CPU cores. That's an enormous jump. So our little end's really now sort of jumping into the middle range. The middle range is jumping into where the enterprise machines sit, and the enterprise are going further up to even bigger machines with Power 10. So what am I trying to actually say here? Well, the decline in Unix server revenue has stopped. We're not going down to zero at some point. We're sort of stabilized, concentrating on our customers that really like enterprise class operating systems. And some people dispute the number of 2.5 billion. Well, it depends whether that's the price of the operating system. When we sell AIX, well, we know it's going to work on a power computer. If you sell Linux, well, you're not sure who's going to supply that computer. So it was the Unix server number before people start complaining. That's not the number I've seen. So look around again. And we should be proud to be working in a nice, stable $2.5 billion IT segment. And AIX, I still maintain, is the best operating system in the world. And there's no denying that Linux is popular in the smaller servers, but it does fall short for mission-critical features, RAS and AIX. And there's a whole bunch of those things that I'm going to go through in this session that Linux just can't match, to be honest. And it's not going to be able to match it, built on the way that its developers actually organize and work. They can't invest serious technology for a long time project to get it up to enterprise class and get it out the door. Now, earlier this week, I came across just a YouTube video, just browsing around. It's Skip Garvin here. He's an old guy like me, a very serious person, works in lab services, and he's got a 6.5-minute video out there. I just love his tone and the way he presents it, but he goes through, out of the top 10 banks in the world, investment people, and insurance companies and retail, that 8 or 9 out of 10 each of those areas are running AIX on power for their mission critical work. So there's still a big market out there. Your typical Linux person never gets to see these people. They're quietly working in a computer room buried somewhere else, and they don't get out very much. He's also got 2 small articles that cover what he was saying in more detail. Very worthwhile listening to this chat for 6.5 minutes. Okay. And he reminds us it's the mission critical, very serious, and it's not going anywhere. It's still very relevant these days. If we go to see that YouTube video, the comments are hilarious. But okay, that's maybe my opinion. Right now, 2017, I did this at the Unix, the technical universities. The very early ones were called Unix in Focus, actually, where AIX was a very big player of that conference. But I did an audit. I had great fun producing these little pictures or reminders about 32 technologies that's built in AIX. Everybody voted for what they thought were their favorite parts of AIX that make AIX the best. And out of that, these are the winners up in here. So Power VM, which is actually not an AIX feature, it's equally true for IBM I and Linux on Power as well. Smitty, I was recently talking to a customer that hates windowing systems like Smitty, but the AIX guys love it. It lets you get the job done very fast, and perfectly right first time. Njmon's in there. I think that might be people being nice to me as I was asking what the favorites were. Then dynamic LPAR changes, live partition mobility, NIM was up there, makes this be. All these things, some of the other operating systems have something similar, but AIX has them very well, particularly the things like the JFS2 file system and the logical volume manager, very strong pieces of AIX. If you go and look at Linux, they have 4 or 5 different file systems. Who wants to choose? With AIX, we only got one. We'll use that one. It's the best one. The most investment in people dollars have gone into that particular file system and make it very, very flexible. And with the LVM, we can shrink the root file system. You look at most of your Linux vendors out there, and you're into 15 commands. And quite honestly, I'm scared to run these because it might just trash my operating system if I didn't understand what was actually going on, or maybe I'm using the wrong command on the wrong file system and that sort of thing. In AIX, you can do that job very, very quickly. Right now, earlier on in the year, I had this sort of eureka moment. So I suddenly thought, well, nobody is actually out there reminding AIX users how good AIX really is. It's easy to, if you don't talk to other AIX people, to think you're the only person here, and you forget all these key features, and that's what I've been talking about here. And of course, we want newbies arriving to AIX and let them find out all these strong features, and they'll be an AIX fan shortly afterwards. Now, in reality, very few techies take training courses, so we need to fix this. And so how do people get up to speed on new technology? Well, I was fixing my son's very fancy watch, just replacing the battery, nothing complicated. So what did I do? I went to YouTube and found 3 videos of that particular model, how to get the back off and how to get the battery out without breaking the spring and all those sorts of things, was all in those videos. So this is the way people are actually learning how to do computers these days. Have to be very careful, because on some topics you might find YouTube videos that are so far out of date they're talking complete nonsense to what the Unix or Linux or AIX you actually got in front of you, and sometimes they're just plain wrong. So you have to find somebody that can speak clearly and is fairly recent video, and then you've got the confidence to believe what they say. So we do have to be careful when you find 200 hits for one particular topic. Okay, so I have a YouTube channel that covers Power, AIX, performance tools, a bit of EOS and those sorts of things. And there's the link to it, Nigel A.R. Griffiths. AR are my 2 middle names. And so I created a playlist out of there of pulling together all the AIX videos that I already had. And I noticed their YouTube that their playlist URLs are enormous. So I started doing some maths in here. That second half has 34 characters in it. There's 26 lowercase, 26 uppercase, and 10 digits. So that's 62 to the power 34. And then, so that's a 9 with 60 zeros. And I've printed them all out there. And that means that YouTube, it's good to see them planning for the future, but they've got a URL that's unique for every atom in 10 million stars like the sun. Some people just don't sit back and think about what they're doing. I've got to be careful what I say, because IBM URLs are way bigger than that. We're probably going for a unique website for every molecule in the universe. Okay, That's just one of my little things I have to talk about when I'm getting old these days. So we have AIX in focus, a playlist. And so here are the videos that are on it. Now, as new features have come out, I've made a YouTube video to explain what's going on and get people started. But a lot of the core subjects, like, for example, Smitty on the top left, well, that's been around for ages and hasn't actually changed very much. They've had some things added to it as we've added features to AIX, but it's not a big whiz-bang event, really. And so as I did Smitty, MXSB, LVM, the Logical Volume Manager, JFS2, live kernel updates. That's been sort of renamed now. It's live updates of AIX because it's doing more than just the kernel updates, libraries and all sorts of things. In there, we've got the PowerFlash cache, Zive. I talked about that a year ago. I was actually on this virtual user group just about a year ago. I don't know if the plan is that I'll always do an AIX lecture near Christmas with Joe Armstrong, but maybe it's not a plan. It's just a coincidence. There was one out for AME, the Active Memory Expansion, and I did an update for that. That's why you can see the little green. Well, it was an arrow at one time, but joining those two up. And I did another one for the advanced O commands and the open source toolbox. So I just added them up. That's 10 new videos in 2020 to fill out our set in here. We've also got some for Njmon out there for advanced topics, not the basic. The Ibm basics. There's some more videos out there. There's about 6 of those, 3 for AIX and 3 for Linux. Okay, so we fleshed those out. That may help some of the old guys that need a refresh and a reminder, and some of the new guys that are trying to get up to speed. And now we've got a video for each one of the primary topics we have available to us. So I'm going to go through some of those hot ones that we've had recently, not the really simple ones, like Smitty and things. And we got the active memory expansion, which always makes us grin because we're going to expand something by compressing it, which is like the opposite, isn't it? 2 things have happened since the original video. We now have 64K memory pages. So that treats the larger pages that we tend to use, for example, with databases and things. And since the original EMVE came out, we now do the compression actually in the hardware, the accelerators actually in the processor itself. So it's a lot faster and it takes less CPU power to actually do that. The other thing that's suddenly, it's another eureka moment, is that over that 10-year period, the price hasn't changed, but the computers have. Typically, servers have something like 16 times more memory at the end of those 10 years. So if you bought 10 gigabytes of memory 10 years ago, you're now buying 160 gigabytes of memory. And I've talked to customers that are running AME, and the ones that do it are really passionate about it. They can't believe, why isn't everybody doing this? Because effectively it's doubling the amount of memory you have in your computer. And the big trick is there's a lot of memory pages out there with nothing in them, particularly Java and things like that. They've got pages full of zeros. They compress really well. Just compress them and put that out of the way, because the actual code isn't using those memory pages at all. We can make way for something that's more important. Okay, the other thing is that we use, there's a command AME pat. Even if you haven't purchased the AME, you can run this command and it will say how much you can expand your memory by and how much CPU time. So if you've got 5% spare capacity in your CPU, then you can say, well, how much compression can I get for that? And of course, if you've got power 8 or 9, the compression, the costly bit, if you like, in CPU cycles, it is now a lot faster. The actual people that are using this, when we announced it in the first video, I was saying, well, let's try an expansion factor of 1.4, so with 40% extra memory. But the people using it say, no, we start at 2 times, double the amount of memory, and we go up from there. So it's a really good way of actually buying memory at very, very reduced prices. Maybe I shouldn't be telling people this, but okay. Another one is the advanced O commands. We have these commands in here, all ending with O. That's why they're called the O commands. So they're there for setting the options for the different sorts of resources in there. The big 2, I guess, are Schedule and VMO for adjusting this CPU scheduling and the virtual memory manager. And if you add them all up, there's 531 tuning options in here. So this is something that you can see an enterprise class operating system. The developers have spent some serious time in here because all of these commands are very, very consistent. The syntax of the commands are the same. You can get a list of what the current settings are, what the default settings are, what the ranges are of the numbers that you could set in those. And so it's very easy to work out what's going on. There's also an explanation you can get straight out of the command about what this means. And then when you set these commands, you can actually get the benefit and get the tuning done. There's some of them in here that are you're not allowed to fiddle with. If you raise a PMR and you have these set, you'll be asked to switch them off because they're well known because they can cause problems. And the support people want to actually have those set when the way they want them set to get you out of a performance problem. This is the sort of thing that I'm afraid Linux may not ever be able to copy. This is a across the board organization of the entire development team. Another one is Xive. A year ago, I gave much more explanation about this new vectoring interrupt service in the back of the machine. All you have to do is upgrade the levels here, and it's automatically switched on. There's nothing for you to do, and it will save a good few percent CPU power. Stop it doing double interrupts to get the interrupt to the right logical partition. Another one in here, I'm a big fan of this one, the open source toolbox. There's loads and loads, the number's probably gone up actually since I've drew this chart in here, of open source tools that are available from IBM. There's a team that get requests. You can go to their website and ask for particular tools, and they put it on the list. If lots of people ask for a tool, then it goes higher up in the priority list. And we have Yum for AIX, so it will sort out any of the prerequisites you need for any of those tools in the toolbox that you want to install. You download something called the Yum bundle, install Yum, which is an independent package that you can just install, and then you can type Yum install and any of the packages in the toolbox. For example, there's a lot of Python stuff in there that could be very useful. And that will actually allow you to do things like machine learning and artificial intelligence on your AIX machine, as well as it has things like Ansible in there, the open source version of Ansible. Another one is live partition mobility. This covers all our operating systems on Power, but very powerful feature and loved by AIX people. This is pointing out there's some checklists. I get some people that say that, excuse me a second, my mobile phone wants to talk to me. Let's put it out of the way. Yes, they got problems with live partition mobility. Well, go and look at the checklist. Maybe there's something in here that we know about that you can't do, or there's they forgot to set something the right way to get things done. I always forget about the virtual optical devices, and then I have to take them out to get LPM to work. Another one is this live update is actually called now. The kernel developers call it LU. In the very early days, it was just service packs and its technology levels, and now we're doing major releases. And I actually got, oh dear, probably shouldn't put 7.3 up there. Yeah, next year we may find that we've got a new one in town, and we can do actually a major release using the live update features. You'll have to be on 7.2 to do the jump. Okay, so that's another one out there that's progressing, and it's sort of an advanced feature that we can take you up a level without having a reboot. The dreaded reboot that everybody wants to not do. Right, if we look at the AIX, this is the sort of chart you get from the AIX offering manager, Maria Ward or Petra Buehler. And it tells you here what's the latest version, 7.2. That first came out in 2015. That's quite a few years ago. So it's not like a young version of AIX. And you can see that next year, AIX 7.1 becomes end of marketing, so you can't buy a new copy of it. and it goes into sort of support, and eventually goes into expensive support. You have to do extended support that starts costing you money. So now, or in the next year, a good time to move to AIX 7.2. I'm a bit more proactive in telling you what you shouldn't be running, right? So 5.3, that's out the door. I thought I got a question last week. 6.1, that's gone. I mean, you shouldn't really be running it. If you've got the extended support and you're on Power 7 Plus or Power 8, then you still have some runway. December next year for Power 7 Plus. And then a little bit longer if you've got a Power 8 machine. But this is being phased out. If you haven't got extended support, you do not have support. Do not phone IBM if something goes horribly wrong with the AIX 6.1. We're trying to get out of supporting that any further. AIX 7.1, as I said before, it's going into extended support next year. That costs you more money. AIX 7.2, TL2 is gone. All right, so you should be on TL3, 4, or 5. 5 is just out, so you don't expect many people are running that yet. VO Server, which is running AIX with a bunch of extra packages, is a similar thing. Everybody should be on VO Server 3.1 something by now. The 2.6, the 2.26 version is gone. It actually ended support September the 30th. I hope you're all aware of that. You can do a special bid for extended support options, or you could just upgrade it. This 2.26 is running AIX 6. It's 10 years out of date, and you actually get a performance boost as you go into VO Server 3.1. Won't carry on nagging you all about that. And here's the similar sort of way. It's gone 2.2 anything. It should be on 2.2.3. I have a blog there upgrading the VO server to 3.1 with all the information that I had over a long project. We started doing the upgrades 3 years ago, so we have quite a lot of experience, and you can get up to the latest version there, 3.1.125, the last time I looked anyway. Right, a few more quick flashes here of information. Yesterday we were talking about Power 10, and these are the two top architects of the power processors in IBM. They've finished the design and the architecture of Power 10 a couple of years ago, and they're actually working on Power 11. In the meantime, it's gone down the stream, and we're making the Power 10 chips. That's going very well, and in the fourth quarter next year, we'll have the Power 10 servers coming out. Well, that's the plan. If nothing ghastly happens, something after a year of pandemics, everybody's crossing their fingers when they say hope nothing happens. But that's the plan, and it'll probably work out that way as well. And so you can go and listen to that an hour and 6 minutes of me talking to regular techies, the system admin guys, DevOps, solution architects, and designers, those sorts of people, rather than the chip designers that get talked to at that Hot Chips conference. And I take a little bit of guesswork of there's dropped some hints that the Power 10 machines might look a little bit like the Power 9 machines, because they were quite a lot like the Power 8 machines. If you've got a sort of winning formula for the range, well, you're not going to just throw it all out and start again. So if that's true, then if we put Power 10 chips into a Power 9-like machine, what actually happens? And we can look at the details. Also this year, we've had, it's now published and been revised, the AIX Enhancements and Modernization Red Book, 200 pages. In there, I like it because there's actually a mention of Njmon. Got an eye chart there down the side of all the subjects, very wide-ranging updates on all of these topics. At the bottom, chapter 7 is AIX Fundamentals, which are reminders of some of the good stuff in AIX, without necessarily telling you that something new has happened in those areas. Oh, I'm preaching to the converted here, Anna. You're already on a Power Systems virtual user group, but I would like to highlight this one in here. Ralph Schmidt-Dannart is a friend of mine, long-term friend of mine. He is Mr. Oracle on Power, and Well, I'm not going to tell you what he's working on now. You can add A and B together and work out what he's probably running on some new computers. And he does those initial benchmarks that let the developers work out. Maybe they're not fully optimized the hardware to let this particular very popular database on power to get the best performance. And so there'll be all sorts of tuning in the firmware and the adapters and all that sort of thing to get the best performance out of it. In the middle of the year, 2020, then we updated our Power 9 machines, the S922 and S924. Internally, we call these the G models because the part number has a G at the end. It's just why I identifying both of those servers in one go. The big thing was that all the adapter slots now are Gen 4. It was a mixture of Gen 4 and Gen 3 before that. Some new NVMe drives in there and some adapters with NVMe on them. Where there's a special one-core model for Ibm AIX guys. They are really little machines with dedicated purpose, maybe sitting out in a retail store, for example. The bigger item in here is what's a terrible name, Power Enterprise Pools. Well, should be now called Power Enterprise and Scale Out Pools, shouldn't it? And why it's called 2.0, I've never known. They've added the function for the scale outs. Why isn't it a 3.0? And what does the 0.0 mean? We never had a point anything else. But anyway, that's out. That's very nice. If you buy the G models, then you can connect it up to the same machines that run the CMC, the console that you can then purchase on the fly extra CPU cores, and you can move the CPU cores between machines. If you power a machine off, you can use the activations on a different scale out machine. Very flexible way of working. There's a red book there and a YouTube from me. Something else that's been happening this year, very experimental. I've been running some AIX user meetings, and the first one I was joined by my colleague here in the UK, Gareth Coates, and he talked about the fact that in April 2020 there was an update to the firmware, and all of a sudden we had Power 9 base level and Power 9 mode level. Before it was just one. And the way they did it confused everybody. And so you need to understand what's going on there. That's because the newer firmware has some extra features. One of those was the gzip accelerators were enabled on AIX. So we actually use the gzip accelerator in the Power 9 processors, and we also need the firmware to support that. So he covered those two particular topics. Now the AIX user meetings were quite a struggle because we never had enough time to write decent presentations for it. They were always a bit last minute. We ran 4 of them. In one way, you could regard them as a bit of a disaster because only like 20 people would turn up. And then I put them on the internet and 400 people would watch the replay. So maybe I'm just in the wrong country or something, or people prefer consuming a half hour of the latest things on AIX at their own leisure, at their own time to suit them, rather than the time that I actually get on the internet and do it live. So in one way, it's quite good. We've paused those at the moment, so we'll probably start doing some more next year if everything goes well. We'll just have to wait and see. Certainly the people that joined them liked them, and there's a website, Aix User Meeting, and you should be able to find that where you can find the slides and the YouTube links to do a replay as well. Okay, just out AIX 7.2 TL5. We have an announcement. Typical IBM drivers desert document goes out. Doesn't excite anybody at all. It tells you it has some new features, but I always want something that says, well, okay, that sounds like a good one. How do I switch that on, and what should I expect? And that documentation doesn't seem to be there. Now, there's a wide-ranging set of topics in here. There's no like big whiz-bang new feature in here. Lots of improvements in things, new hardware being supported. And if it's one of the things that you really care about, then there'll be some new features in there that you particularly like. I tried to do a summary in here. Not going to really read all these out. Bottom left, we got some new adapters, so those are supported. top right, SMB version 3. A lot of people like that. That allows your Windows machines to talk to an AIX machine. SMB was Microsoft's attempt at duplicating NFS, in my humble opinion. NFS works fine, and it's actually odd, but that in the last year, I got a Windows 10 Pro here. I can run NFS on it and connect to my AIX machines. It's really spooky seeing all my AIX files on my Windows machine in a graphical, the file explorer. But anyway, that's available out there. JFS2's been uprated, 14 million open files per SRAD. I've never seen a per SRAD. So if you have a big LPAR that's straddling across CPUs, then you're going into further system resource affinity domains. And so you could have maybe 2 or 3 times that number of open files. I'm not quite sure who is opening that number of files, but there we go. The live update had some limitations, and they're slowly being worked through. So Spectrum Protect, Oracle with ASM, that's the raw disk access, is Veritas. I don't hear much about Veritas. It was a very big thing a while back. And SAP in there, there's a tech note for that as well. Security things are in there, some improvements. We can encrypt a logical volume at that level. In the past, we've encrypted journal file systems. We still can do that as well. NPIV is out there, and we can do NVMe over fiber channel if you've got the very fast 32 gigabit adapters. I'm not sure if I want to go through any of these other ones in here. I like the Toolbox, whole bunch of things in there. There's updated 113 packages in the last 6 months. Python we've had for a while, but to use Python you have to use, well, they're either called a class or a module or a library. These are the pieces you add to give you lots of extra function for your programs to use. There's 40 packages in there now for Python. Python 2 is gone while it's end of year. Count the days. It's the 10th, isn't it? It's got 20 days to live, and then it's dead. Everybody has to move off at that point. Be careful you're not still using that, or you're not using an application still using Python 2. I guess it'll be functionally stabilized, but there's no support for it, and everybody's moved to Python 3. Okay. Oh, this is a chart. I borrowed this one. It's either Maria Ward or Carl Burnett. And this is one thing I didn't point out is the NPIV stack had some parts of it were effectively single-threaded, and now we're multi-threaded, multiple queues going between the AIX and the VIO server, so you don't bottleneck on those queues if you're actually pushing these devices very hard. So it's a nice feature to have, and the graph over here is showing you that it goes quite a lot faster if you're using those techniques. Okay, very special day, 5th of September. I'll remember that, along with the day I was born, the day I got married, the day my children were born, and the 5th of September 2020, because the Njmon project hit 1 million downloads. I was there, it was a Saturday, clicking the button every 10 minutes and watching it slowly creep up to 1 million. We're actually 2 months on. We've actually got another 50,000, so we're actually running at about 200,000 a year coming in using this. Most of those, well, a lot of them are for the good old AIX. That's not going anywhere, but increasingly, lots of people are using my new tool that we'll talk about in a minute, Njmon, and the different flavor of it called Imon, and some tools that it has in there. There's some other bits and pieces in there. There's what I call my nano website, a website in 200 lines of code that just shows you the principles it's using to download files and how you do that with sockets over the network. Okay. Another thing happened, bottom right, these guys in the powerdevops.com company. We've actually met them at a technical university. They're quite a bright bunch, what I call youngsters. They're younger than me anyway. They do porting some of the popular applications that IBM doesn't over to Linux on Power, and in this case, AIX on Power. And so they ported InfluxDB and Grafana, my 2 popular tools that I use with Njmon, and that now runs under AIX. I got round to eventually actually giving it a go. Work first time. It's actually in install P format, so you just run an AIX command and it installs them. Takes nearly 4 or 5 seconds. Both these products are very clever, unlike some classic old programs that came in 28,000 files. Influx DB is 2 files. One is the actual database that I could run this as a daemon, and then there's a CLI program you run to talk to it. And so the install is very, very quick and simple. Down the bottom, there's a URL on a expert blog that I run through every single command I did to install it. It spends longer creating a file system in which to put the Influx database than actually doing the install. And then it goes through some of the pragmatic things to get a dashboard downloaded from Grafana and see your first graph. That took longer than the actual install. And I think I want to make that into a YouTube video just to prove how quickly we can do it. And I'm pretty sure if I practice a little bit, I could get it down to 10 minutes. But then I thought, actually, I should be using something like Ansible to do this for me. Once I got that sorted out, I could then just roll it out and do 1,000 an hour or something if I really wanted to do that. But it's very simple to install those. Okay, so that brings me on to the favorite tool. Okay. Njmon is my new Njmon. A few things changed from Njmon. First of all, we want to use standard formats and not comma-separated values, and a bit quirky format that we had for the old Njmon. And we want to work with things like the modern time series databases. InfluxDB is my favorite because it's so easy to get up and running. There are other ones that are popular out there. Elastic, there's something called Elasticsearch, and there's sometimes called ELK. Splunk is another one that's closed source. And Prometheus is quite popular. That's going out with a lot of Kubernetes and the Red Hat version of it, OpenShift. Okay, so we want to work with all these things. Grafana is the graphing tool. Each of those tools have their own graphing tools, but Grafana will work across all of them, and it's rated as the most user-friendly and powerful one for doing your graphs. So that's one I concentrate on. A whole bunch of stats down the side, creating a lot of stats as we go. One thing that happened, this has been running since 2018, although there wasn't much of it running in that year. But this year we have Njmon, which is the original that generates JSON data. We changed the daemon that you talk to. There used to be a collector and an injector. That was merged into one Python program called Njmon-D. Yeah, it's a central place where you can send the JSON data and it puts it into the InfluxDB, or it can put it into a JSON file that you can ship to one of the other time series databases. Then I worked out that InfluxDB actually has its own format called line protocol, very simple to operate. Only took me a day to work out the nuances of it and how to get it to working. So I changed Njmon, all the routines that created the JSON data, I just changed those at the back end and get them to format it ready for line protocol data. The collecting of the stats in AIX and Linux is all exactly the same. It's actually the same program file. Just give it an option and it will generate the other format of data. And you can get that down there. So I decided today, fairly last minute, new news, what's actually happening. Well, as part of the Technical University, I gave a lab on getting you going with Grafana and looking at the Njmon stats in particular. So there's 2 links there, not hard to see. One's the YouTube video of me doing the lab, and then I actually put the lab app up on the Njmon website so you can see all the pictures and the descriptions of what you're doing and why, and you could work through those yourself just to get you going. I spent the past week with a mainframe. That's a bit of a shock for somebody who goes around calling mainframes dinosaurs 30 years ago. They're still there. They're still going strong. They're real fast computers. I'm not sure whether to call them a mainframe or Z or S390s, but we'll have to work that out. They run various flavors of Linux, so I've been porting Njmon onto them. It should have been just a straight compile, 30 seconds. But it turns out that they've changed some of the Linux files that are quite unique. A classic one is the /proc/CPU info. I looked in that, it was completely unrecognizable from looking at Linux on AMD 64 and Linux on Power, it was completely different for the mainframe guys. I don't know what they were thinking, but there we are. We had to work around a few little things, and that took me half a day. And now we can support the mainframe guys as well. I currently have a little bug in the support for Spectrum Scale. That's been there for a year and a half or something. Some people with very big GPFS file systems, this is a global file system that you can spread across hundreds of computers, and do terabytes of data shifting between all your computers. The problem was that the stats numbers got bigger and bigger and bigger the longer you let it run, until it overflowed the data structures that I was putting the numbers in. So I had to make some changes, and I introduced a bug. So I think I know what's wrong with that. I'm working that out. There'll probably be a version 71 to have the GPFS stats working again. Recently, as I read around about these time series databases, I found an article using FB Profit. And in the article explains this is how to get data out from Python, out of the InfluxDB, put it into a special format, which I think is called pandas, which is like a spreadsheet. You can run the Profit software on it, and it will do this trend prediction, looking at your graph, looking at cyclical things, busy during the middle of the days, busy at the weekends, or whatever it is, and then doing predictions forward. Now you can take that prediction data, push it back into InfluxDB, and graph it with Grafana. So that's the thing I'm going to be playing with over the holiday festivities when the wife's not looking. Now, you're probably asking, what does FB stand for? Well, this is a bit embarrassing because I've never used this product. It's called Facebook. Facebook Profit is the actual way the software's going. But I'm not proud. I'll go and use a bit of Facebook technology if it suits me. So that's something we're looking at and going off to do. This is highlighted finding that Njmon generates JSON data and the Nimon generates line protocol data. You can take the bottom line there, you can take Nimon data, push it into Telegraph, which is something that comes from the guys who write InfluxDB, and they can transform it into all sorts of things. So you can pump that into Elastic or pump it into Splunk rather than going the JSON route. So that's out there. And using the Telegraph, we're now supporting Prometheus, which is important for OpenStack. Bootstrapping, this is some comments in here. Both of these tools have, and other tools similar to them, there's a cloud service you can buy in, and then you don't care how they're running it. You just log in and save the data and graph it. They have an enterprise one that runs on your computer with full support. There's a little star against that one. We asked them, a customer actually asked them, can we have the support for InfluxDB on Power? And they said no. So warning there, you may have to, if you want enterprise support, you may have to run it on your Intel type machine. The alternative is use open source. There's free, it's open source code, right? And they pre-compile it for AMD and ARM, and it also runs for Linux and Mac OS and Windows. Personal workstations aren't a particularly good idea because you want the servers up all the time gathering the stats. When you close down your Apple Mac to take it home on the train, of course, you're not collecting stats anymore, so there'll be great big gaps in your stats. So you want them really on servers, but if you're doing a prototype, you can use those. Again, the guys at Power DevOps are happy to recompile InfluxDB and Grafana, and they run on Rail and SUSE, and now AIX. That's a good win-win. This is highly available to us. This goes round the install, maybe 10 minutes. You create the database inside InfluxDB to insert the data into. Then for each of the endpoints, you take a binary zip file, unzip it, and you run ninstall. It'll install it in /user local bin for Linux or user lbin for AIX. And then you'll put a one-line entry into your cron tab, and that's it. You're done. It's up and running. The data will be flowing into InfluxDB. You could put them into a service that starts with the computer, for example, but this particular cron tab entry will start at the next hour boundary, even if you forget. And then you go to Grafana and you pull down some dashboards from grafana.com, and you got all your dashboards. This is a little snapshot I used in a conference for Singapore. I'm not going to go through these. Lots and lots of beautiful graphs, and I'd rather actually show you how this all works. Right, let's try breaking out of that. Oh, perhaps that works. Right, that's quicker than I expected. So hopefully you're seeing my Grafana screen here. So I'll just click along here. I could select, these are my dashboards in here, and I've got them up here as well. So here's one, it's called my Simple 6. This is a nice simple one to get you started. And so in here you can change the machine and you'll get the different set of graphs. Is it working? Yep, the network's good. And so for different machines, these are my different servers in here. This one was interesting, the server 5, a little bit slow there, but there we are. You can see this is an important graph for power, guys. Here we have in light blue, the virtual CPU number. The entitlement is the guaranteed compute cycles that you're going to get. And then the peaks are the actual use. Over here, you can see it's limited to one CPU, and we're hitting the top of that CPU, so it needs some more. So I changed it to 2, and now and again, we're still hitting the top. So this is a very good example of latent demand. When things hit the top like this, you can't tell how high those peaks are. So maybe I need to go to 3 CPUs in here. And entitlement should come up to cover most of these peaks if I want it to run very efficiently, use good use of the CPU. But we have memory, file systems, they're not doing much in here. The run queue, leaping up and down, and networks and disks. This is my simple 6, get you going. Some special little techniques in here. We're actually getting Grafana to find all the file systems and putting them in here, and same with disks and networks. So we can use the Grafana to find out how many file system, networks, and disks this particular server actually has, and these will get adjusted when you flip between the machines. Here's another one. These are called single stats in here, so it'll actually draw a little graph behind giving you a single number. It's a way of having lots and lots of numbers on a screen, and you can get it to change color when it goes over thresholds, so you can actually get very quickly draw your own. Well, that's idle, that's all right. We're having very high idle doesn't count, but we can pull out other statistics about the configuration of the machines, and we've got some graphs, further graphs down here. So this is my large sets in here for AIX, lots of stats and settings up in the top in here, and a number of disks and networks. What is this? Silver 5, that's the same one as before. So down in here, I was experimenting with some of the more advanced graphs. This is called LEDs in here, and you can very quickly see which of your CPUs are busiest. These are like I call rev counters, and we have donuts, which is a variation of a pie chart in here. And we got other things in here. We got logical and physical CPU use, seeing the difference between them. And we got things like decremental interrupts. That's famous for one of our guru level performance tuning experts likes to see these numbers, and we clip them, and you can have a look at them in here. This is for VO server only, so this is just a regular AIX. Okay, this is once you've got a time series database, you start finding other data. We have a Raspberry Pi in a computer room with temperature probes, and I had a quick look at this, and I never realized this until today. Wow, this is our V7000 disk subsystem. Went up 3 degrees at this particular day in here. If I hover over a particular number, you can see it goes bold, and you want to see this one. It's the E850 temperature in here. What's the one down the bottom? That's the air conditioning. That's a probe stick into the floor, and this is the room temperature in here, a bit warmer. Okay, jump in here. This is a heat map. They tend to call it a carpet view. I don't quite remember. It's meant to look like the pattern of a carpet or something. This is my workstation. So you can see I'm busier in the mornings than in the afternoons. And you can see this is Saturday and Sunday, so it's a bit quieter. Oops, unless I log in when the wife's not looking and do some work or play with some technology. These are proving quite useful. This is the chart you can use when you want to find out, well, which is the busiest part of the week for this database or this SAP server or a web front end. And then that is the bit, if you like, up in here in red. This is the thing you should be tuning to. You want it to run well in that particular instance. Look at the graphs and resource usage in that time of the day on that particular day of the week. The days of the week look fairly normal. It's slightly busier at the end of the week, isn't it? Okay, moving along. Here's another view. This is the serial number on the machine, and it has these particular LPARs in it. We can look in the database looking for serial numbers and locate the LPARs which are running in here, and we can see the which one's busy. The one at the top in here is Silver 4. So this is not stacked. In here, these are stacked. So you can see 2.5 CPUs of this particular server are actually being consumed at this period of time. Now, I haven't showed you things in here. This is the time period in here, so we can change that. We can quickly change to yes, good, it works. This is for the last week. We can go up. Try again. Pop down. So we can cop down here. We're going to have the last 6 months. I'm not sure I've been collecting data that long. It should. It's got a lot of data to go and do, or to get fetched back. That will come back in a minute or so. In here, I was just trying something in here. This is looking at an AC922 that has the GPUs in here. So this is the GPU megahertz, the utilization of the GPUs, the memory utilization. If your model's too big, you'll overflow memory and you'll run out of space. These are the actual descriptions of the graphic processors in here, and you can see that the GPUs go quiet when they're not in use. The maximum, the megahertz goes down, and when you start kicking workloads into them, they start getting busier. So we can zoom into a work period and see they're running sort of 3 jobs one at a time in this particular case. Right, if we go back to here. This is half of the value of time series database in Grafana. The next bit I'll show is the real power of this thing. There's lots of stats that aren't on in here, and you can see this run queue in here. If we didn't have that, we thought, oh, I wonder what the run queue is doing. We just click on here, add a new panel, and you think, whoa, it got the data. How did it know? Well, if you look down here, it says random walks. So it's just generated some data. If we tell it which database we want it in here, I've got lots of test databases, and then we say in here, something's gone a bit flaky here. Looks like my network. This should be popping up values. Select measurement. No, I know what the name of it is. Kernel. Okay, value. Yep. It should be popping up values like this, and that's not going to be working for us. We want to put in here. Nope, something's gone wrong with the connection to. If I've come out of here, is it still running? Saying there's an error in the gateway. That's a networking issue. Okay, well, let's go back in here and do things in here. I want to put in here host, and then tell it to pick out the AIX hosts in here so I can get a list of them. Down in here, I could do things like use a stacks chart in here, and we can do things like changing the area graph and fill in the gradients and make a nice, pretty looking graph, but it's not going to let me do that at the moment. Let's try a refresh. No, it's got a complaint there. Okay, well, I'll leave that for now. My network's let me down. It is catching up. Let's quickly try it again. New panel. Random walk. Default. Maybe I clicked on the wrong database. Okay, so in here, kernel, and you can see it pops up a list of things. That's the one I want to help you out. In here, I want to have the run queue in here. Great, it's all working. Here, I want a host and tell it a particular host. This is a variable that gets selected by this thing up in here. In here, I'm going to put in run queue, and I'm going to put in here demo or something, and that's all working fine. Then we could do things. This is lines. We could say fill up the bottom in here, put it into a gradient mode. So it's let's try something down here. Yeah, it's putting the details in here. We can put stacks in here. We can put on bars, lines, and points. Yeah, we can have little points. Oh, they're quite big points. We can go in here and make them smaller points. There we go. Then we now have this new graph. If I wanted to find out more information, I could hover over it and type V for view and drill in. Have a lot of detail there. I can come back out. That's the plan. Escape, right, to get back out. Okay. And one thing that took me a long time to find is how do I change the color? Well, this is where the color is decided down in here. So if I want to change it, I can click on there. And I've got a new red graph, gradient filled, and it's running a little bit slow, but that's all I wanted to show you in this demo. So let's go back to my slides. Hopefully you can see that. This is the project website. There's some blogs on all this in some places. And we'll move on. I have 13 videos now on how to set it up and all the things that we've done and some new stuff that customers wanted some help. In October, we got to 16,000 views. So we do have a bit of a community out here watching these videos and keeping up to speed of what's happening. One thing that is always, everybody says, you know, ha ha, you want documentation? No, read the source code. But I thought I'd try and help people out because if you actually want to do some more graphs to look at different aspects, you do need to understand the structure of the graph. So I've actually written a script in here, Njmon list stats. You pass it an InfluxDB. This is what the nym command actually generates, line by line data that gets pushed straight into InfluxDB if you want. So we'll take one of those files and it finds the tags. So here's the host name, AIX and Linux, what hardware it's on, the serial number, and the machine type model. And then it will say the measure is config, and these are the values in here. The measure is physical total, and these are the values in here. And it goes through each of the different measures, which is like an area of stats, and then you can see the actual names of the stats inside that. That should help you out. On AIX, we have 1,400 stats. On AIX, we currently have 838. Once you get one of these things working, you'll find, well, hang on, we've got applications here, and we want some numbers about what they're doing. So we've added another tool called nmeasure that can allow you, if you can get it in a shell script, to get some stats out of your applications, then you can run this command. The little g is the measure, the area, but then we actually have the statistics in a very simple format that's hardly needs explaining, and that then adds the tags, you know, the host names and the OS type and the serial numbers to the data as well, and puts it into InfluxDB, and then you can find that data in your database and graph those as well. So we've got some examples in here. We got a relational database, perhaps your sales, how fast your sales are working, how many users you got online, although we can track that another way. Maybe IT tasks, you can say how long the data load took, how long the backup took, and those sorts of things can actually be stored in here as well. Right, so we're nearly done. This is my final chart, except one. So this has had to contact me and things about the project and where to find them. Njmon itself is not going away. Njmon in AIX is part of AIX, so the AIX developers maintain that with a few little assistance from me. The Njmon for Linux is open source, so I'm in control of that. Occasionally add some new things into there, but it's pretty stable, getting most of the stats. There's some sort of fiber channel stats that should go in at some point. This needs some time. So Njmon is a new way of doing things. The nice thing about Njmon is you don't end up with thousands and thousands and thousands of Njmon files that you have to manage and back up and do whatever you want and organize and try and graph. So you can do all of these things with Njmon and not save the data apart from the Influx database. Of course, you do have to then manage your Influx database, but at least it's a proper database all in one way, all in one place, and you've got things like Grafana to extract the value out of it. Okay. So I think we're done there. Going to hand back to Joe.
Oh, we'll see. Can you hear me, Nigel?
I can, and you're not missing bits of it.
Oh man, what a mess in the beginning of this. Sorry about that, everybody, and sorry
I
about
think we
that,
got
Nigel.
away with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So great job, Nigel, and it's amazing. You even ended with a few minutes to spare for questions. So let me throw a couple questions at you that were typed in here that I couldn't answer.
Okay.
One, is Njmon part of the current Sourceforge download for Linux?
Yes, Njmon is in the same project as Nmon because it's very much like Nmon data, but the format is different and it gives us some extra flexibility. So they're included in the 1 million downloads now. Yes.
So
That's,
okay. So that's what I meant is Njmon. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So another question: does Njmon install provide the visualizations in Grafana out of the box, or do they need to build them in manually?
Okay. Yeah. Well, I don't want to demonstrate that. It'll take 5 minutes. But in that workshop that we used at the Technical University, and there's an example of me going through it very quickly in a YouTube video. No, so you install the Njmon or Nimon on your endpoints with the N install. That's just a tiny little program it loads, and you just need a cron tab or something similar to start it off on AIX, virtual IO servers, or Linux. You install the InfluxDB and the Grafana. You go into Grafana and select create a data source, which is InfluxDB, so it joins the two of them together. And then you effectively have a blank dashboard with nothing in it. So you can just start drawing graphs of your data if you want. The smarter money is you go to grafana.com and there's grafana.com/dashboards. There's hundreds of dashboards, and there's about, I don't know, 15 of them that I've created for the Nmon data. So in there, you can very quickly download from grafana.com to your copy of Grafana dashboard, and then it should just come up and you can see everything you can see here. You see, oh, you can't see it now. I was looking at that AIX Simple 6, so that's a very simple one to get going. It will, when you download it, it will check which database you think the data is in case the database name is different. But otherwise, everything is automatic. In fact, you go to your copy of Grafana and you can just say import and you give it the number of the dashboard, which is on the grafana.com. And if it's connected to the internet, it'll go and get the dashboard for you. If you haven't got internet connections, then you can download the JSON data and then just import the file with the JSON data that is fully specs the entire dashboard. So it takes, once you've got the idea of what's going on, it will take you, 1 minute to download a new dashboard.
Right. Next question is Ansible. Let's see if Ansible is being supported in AIX. Is that the core file set with a Python interpreter, or just added to the toolbox?
If you want Ansible from Red Hat with all the support that you get with them, and they have a great big database of Ansible, I don't know what you call them, scripts or programs or cookbooks or whatever they're called, then you purchase that and you get access to all those managed, secure descriptions of how to use Ansible programs. If you want to give it a try, you can on AIX, you can go to the AIX Toolbox and you pull down the open source version of Ansible, and you can start writing Ansible scripts yourself. They have put a lot of the officially supported ones are actually in something called the Ansible Galaxy repository, so you can pull those down, but you're not supported in that case if you're running Ansible on AIX itself.
Okay.
There's one thing there as well. Ansible by default uses SSH to get to its endpoint, and it does rather assume that Python is there when it gets there. In Linux, that's typically will happen unless you try to produce a very small kernel. In AIX, we don't install Python by default, but the Python that you want is in the AIX toolbox. So you can use yum install Python 3 and get Python down, and then you're okay for Ansible work. There are rumors that Python in the next big release may have Python as a default install.
Okay. Somebody was asking if you would care to compare or contrast Njmon with LPAR to RRD.
Well, we know those guys very well. And they have a free version, or last time I checked they did. And they also have a supported version. You pay them not very much money, and they'll fully support you if you run into troubles. There are two performance management systems. LPAR to RD has been out quite a while, so it does some things that Njmon doesn't do at the moment. I would guess that Njmon's collecting more stats than the LPAR to RD. I'm not sure how flexible the graphing side of LPAR or RD. I haven't tried that tool for 2 or 3 years, so they may have improved. I like the extreme flexibility of what we have with Grafana.
Okay. So a couple of questions about the slides. I imagine, I don't know if you're going to make some changes to your slides and send me a new deck, Nigel, that you want me to upload, or should I just do these ones, or what would you like?
Do those ones, yes. You're missing the fact that I confessed to GPFS stopped working. And the
Okay.
FB profit experiment I'm going to run over Christmas. But otherwise, you got the same deck.
Okay. So I will put these slides up as soon as this is over up on the wiki site then. It'll be interesting to see how the recording turns out with all of the audio issues that we were having up in the beginning of it, but we'll see. And it takes a little bit for that to get downloaded and ready, but I'll put that up as well.
Okay.
Let's see. Somebody's asking if you could talk a little bit more about, it says NME over fiber channel. NVMe over fiber channel?
Yes, that's right. Yes, there's a one-liner in there. That's as much as I know, because I don't have a fiber channel that's fast enough and those latest adapters, so I haven't been able to give it a try.
Yeah, we'll have to get Douglas Gibbs on some data.
Yeah,
to talk about that.
Or Carl or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay. You know, I think with that, I've kind of gone through. It's hard to actually get through some of these with all the problems we're having at the beginning. There's a bunch of input from that. But again, everybody, I'm sorry about the audio issues up front. Not sure what the deal was. I finally did get cleaned up on my end. Nigel, thanks so much for taking over and getting started. I understand I was kind of cutting in on you there a couple of times.
Yeah, I think it was buffering it, so it was making it complicated. You were hearing what I was saying 2 minutes ago, was I? So it's a laugh, isn't it? Yeah. We may be able to chop the first
audio,
5 minutes out.
It was doing the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, thanks so much, Nigel. Really appreciate this. Great stuff. And you know, I always try and make a December bug just a little bit, you know, maybe more fun, maybe a bit lighter. I'm not sure this was light, but it was different and it was still super educational. So I really appreciate you doing this.
Okay, you're welcome. Thanks everybody for joining us.
Yep. Thanks everybody, and you know, Merry Christmas to y'all, and I hope you stay healthy and we get through this and we can all go on with normal lives and maybe get together at some conference again sometime in the future.
Yeah, that would be great.
With that, I wondered though. With that, we'll sign off for now, and again, Merry Christmas.
Okay, thanks Joe for hosting me. Bye.
Bye.